She insulted the human 28 years ago. He chose silence and disappeared. It was a bright morning on Aurora Prime, the human-colonized planet that had become a center for interstellar trade and diplomacy. Ships of all shapes and sizes floated in orbit above the gleaming city, their metallic surfaces reflecting the twin suns that bathed the planet in a warm, golden light. The council building, a towering structure of crystal and steel, gleamed in the sunlight, a symbol of human ingenuity and progress. Inside, delegates from dozens of alien civilizations had gathered, their forms and colors strange to human eyes, yet all bound together by a fragile thread of diplomacy. Ethan Varus stood at the edge of the council chamber, a young human engineer whose quiet reputation had slowly grown over the past decade. Unlike many of his colleagues, Ethan did not seek attention or praise. He preferred observation over debate, listening over speaking. His eyes, sharp and calculating, moved across the room, taking in every detail of the proceedings. Today, however, was different. Today, he could feel the weight of expectation pressing down on him. Humanity had achieved a remarkable position in interstellar affairs, and every human representative was expected to demonstrate both intelligence and courage. The council was in session, and the topic of discussion was the allocation of resources for new starship technology. Aliens from various sectors argued passionately, each emphasizing their civilization's needs and priorities. The room buzzed with tension as words were exchanged at a rapid pace. Ethan listened silently, waiting for the right moment to intervene if needed. He had spent months developing new concepts for energy-efficient propulsion systems, ideas that could transform humanity's presence in the galaxy. But for now, he remained quiet, observing the personalities and strategies of those around him. It was during this delicate moment that the alien diplomat, a tall, shimmering being named Vorel, turned his attention toward Ethan. Vorel had long regarded humans as clever but ultimately inexperienced. His species, known for their centuries of technological advancement, had always considered human achievements to be minor in comparison. Today, Vorel seemed determined to make his opinion clear. "You, human," Vorel said, his voice like the echo of wind through metal. "Your people are ambitious, yes, but their so-called advancements are trivial. They pretend to understand forces far beyond their capacity. Tell me, how can such primitive minds hope to influence the course of this council?" The words were sharp, cutting through the air like a blade. Murmurs spread across the chamber. Some humans flinched, feeling the sting of insult. Others glanced at Ethan, expecting him to respond, to defend humanity with pride and fire. Yet Ethan did nothing. His expression remained calm, almost serene. He stood still, his eyes steady, his mind clear. In that moment, silence became his answer. Vorel, growing frustrated at the lack of reaction, continued to speak, his words dripping with disdain. "It is amusing," he said, "that such fragile beings call themselves engineers and scientists. You have not the experience nor the understanding to participate in matters of importance. Perhaps it is best that you remain silent forever, as your presence contributes nothing." The council chamber fell completely silent. The alien's insult echoed in the minds of all present. Some humans shifted nervously, unsure how to respond. Others felt a burning desire to defend their species. But Ethan's calm did not waver. He took a slow breath, then turned his gaze to the floor. He did not raise his voice, nor did he speak a single word. Instead, he made a decision that would change the course of his life forever. Without a word, he turned and walked toward the exit. His steps were deliberate, measured, each footfall echoing softly against the polished floor. The room seemed to hold its breath as he passed. Vorel's expression shifted from annoyance to confusion. He could not understand why Ethan had chosen silence over confrontation. In the world of politics and diplomacy, a response was expected. Silence was rare, almost unnatural. But Ethan knew that some battles were not meant to be fought in the moment. Some victories required patience, observation, and time. As Ethan left the council chamber, whispers followed him through the corridors. Where is he going? Why does he not respond? Does he accept the insult? The questions remained unanswered. He moved past the security gates, past the bustling streets filled with citizens and diplomats, and stepped into the quiet of the city's outer districts. Here, the noise of the council and the crowd faded, replaced by the soft hum of automated transport systems and the distant calls of alien traders. Ethan's mind was not clouded by anger. He did not feel the need for immediate revenge or justification. Instead, he focused on thought and planning. The insult, though sharp, was a spark rather than a wound. He realized that the council's perception of humanity could not be changed with words alone. True change required action, innovation, and proof of capability. For that reason, he chose silence. He chose disappearance. Over the next few weeks, Ethan's absence became a topic of discussion across Aurora Prime and the Interstellar Council. Speculation ran wild. Some believed he had been kidnapped or coerced into leaving. Others thought he had retired in shame, unable to bear the public humiliation. A few, however, suspected something different, that Ethan's silence was not a sign of weakness but of strategy. But no one knew the truth. Ethan had vanished from public life, leaving only rumors and unanswered questions behind him. In the quiet of the outer sectors, Ethan began his new life. He moved to a remote research station, far from the eyes of humans and aliens alike. The station, abandoned decades ago, was filled with old technology and relics of civilizations long gone. To others, it appeared desolate and forgotten. To Ethan, it was a treasure trove of knowledge waiting to be discovered. He spent his days exploring, studying, and experimenting. He learned to repair ancient devices, to unlock systems thought to be lost forever. Each success fueled his understanding, expanding his mind and his vision for humanity's future. Ethan also observed the galaxy from a distance. He watched human colonies grow, alien trade routes expand, and political tensions rise. He remained unseen, his presence invisible to those who had once judged him, and yet he was never idle. Every discovery, every innovation, he carefully documented. He improved energy systems, propulsion methods, and defense mechanisms in ways that no one could anticipate. The human race, oblivious to his work, was slowly being prepared for a new chapter, one that Ethan alone could envision. Despite his isolation, Ethan remained connected to the essence of humanity. He read reports, analyzed communications, and followed the achievements of his people. He felt pride in their progress, yet also recognized the challenges ahead. The insults of the past were nothing compared to the potential of the future. Humanity, he knew, was capable of extraordinary things, and if guided wisely, it could rise above every expectation, even those of the most dismissive aliens. Years passed. Ethan became a master of forgotten technologies, a silent guardian of human advancement. He learned to harness energy sources that others considered impossible. He designed systems that could protect entire colonies, travel faster than conventional ships, and expand human presence into uncharted space. And still, he remained in the shadows, waiting for the right moment to reveal his work. Back on Aurora Prime, the Council had largely moved on, though whispers of Ethan's disappearance never fully faded. Humans remembered him with a mixture of admiration and curiosity. Alien diplomats occasionally mentioned him, usually with a tone of confusion or mild irritation. "He disappeared so quietly," they would say. "No one knows what he is planning." And they were right. No one knew, not the Council, not the public, not even the humans closest to him. Ethan had chosen a path of patience and preparation, a path that required time, silence, and strategy. And so the galaxy continued to turn. Ships traveled through the stars, trade negotiations progressed, and civilizations expanded. Yet in the quiet reaches of uncharted space, a human engineer worked tirelessly, unseen but unstoppable. His silence was not surrender. His disappearance was not defeat. It was the beginning of something far greater, a slow but steady preparation that would one day change the course of history. Ethan often paused in his work to look at the stars. Each point of light represented a world, a civilization, a challenge waiting to be met. He felt no hatred toward those who had insulted him. Instead, he felt a quiet determination, a desire to show, not through words but through deeds, that humanity was capable of wonders beyond imagination. He understood that true strength was measured not in immediate victories, but in long-term vision and action. In the silence of the station, surrounded by alien technology and human ingenuity, Ethan Varus began to build the future. And though the galaxy had forgotten him for now, the seeds he planted would one day bloom, revealing to all the true power, creativity, and resilience of the human spirit. And somewhere in the bustling chambers of the Interstellar Council, the memory of that insult remained, a faint, almost forgotten echo. But soon the echo would grow into a sound impossible to ignore. Humanity, led by the quiet engineer who had once chosen silence over anger, was preparing to step into the light. The time of waiting had begun. For years, Ethan Varus lived in quiet isolation on his hidden station, far beyond the eyes of both humans and aliens. The galaxy stretched endlessly around him, filled with uncharted systems, unknown planets, and mysteries that had been forgotten for centuries. The silence of this remote space was a comfort, a place where he could think, experiment, and grow without interruption. He had long learned to rely on himself, trusting his mind and his ingenuity more than the opinions of others. Ethan spent his days exploring old star maps and ancient communication records. Many civilizations had risen and fallen long before humans began their journey into the stars, leaving relics scattered across the galaxy. Some of these relics were simple, long-abandoned stations, while others were complex machines built by civilizations far older and wiser than any known species. To Ethan, these were not just artifacts, they were lessons waiting to be understood. He began by studying alien technologies that humans had barely glimpsed in their earliest encounters. Devices that produced energy without fuel, ships that could move faster than conventional engines, and communication systems that transmitted signals across entire galaxies fascinated him. He carefully analyzed their structures and designs, taking notes and gradually adapting them to human understanding. Unlike others, he did not seek recognition or fame. Each discovery was a step toward a goal that only he could see, a vision of humanity rising quietly without relying on the approval of those who had doubted it. Ethan also trained himself in survival. Alone in a distant part of the galaxy, he could not depend on anyone else. He learned to repair his station systems, recycle air and water efficiently, and produce energy from the stars themselves. Every challenge he faced strengthened him. The galaxy, vast and indifferent, became a teacher. And in its vastness, Ethan discovered that humanity's potential was far greater than anyone had imagined. As decades passed, the galaxy changed around him. Human colonies expanded slowly but steadily, sending ships farther into space. Aliens continued their trade and diplomacy, unaware that one human quietly observed them, understanding their strengths, their weaknesses, and the opportunities they left behind. Ethan realized that while humans often relied on immediate victories and negotiations, they were capable of far more through careful planning, study, and innovation. One day, as he explored a derelict research station floating near a dying star, Ethan discovered something remarkable. The station contained records of an ancient civilization known as the Aralith, a species that had mastered energy manipulation centuries before humans had even begun interstellar travel. Their machines could convert stellar energy into usable power, create shields that could withstand cosmic storms, and communicate across vast distances instantaneously. Ethan spent weeks studying the Aralith designs. He carefully replicated their mechanisms in his own station, improving and adapting them to human engineering standards. Every adjustment made the technology more stable, more efficient, and compatible with human use. He realized that if these designs were implemented, humanity could travel farther, explore deeper, and protect itself more effectively than any other species in the galaxy. But Ethan did not stop there. He also studied alien communication networks, learning to intercept signals and understand alien languages and codes. From these signals, he gathered intelligence about alien movements, trade routes, and technologies. Some of these species considered humans insignificant, yet they revealed their secrets in subtle ways. Ethan absorbed these lessons quietly, using them to strengthen his own understanding without drawing attention. Ethan's life became a rhythm of study, experimentation, and reflection. He tested energy systems that could power entire colonies, propulsion mechanisms that allowed ships to travel faster than light, and defense systems that could protect civilizations from natural and artificial threats. Each breakthrough was meticulously documented, stored safely in encrypted archives, and tested repeatedly. He knew that one mistake could compromise decades of work, so patience became his greatest ally. Occasionally, Ethan reflected on the day he had left Aurora Prime. The insult from Vorel, the alien diplomat, no longer hurt him. Instead, it had become a reminder of why he had chosen silence. Words, he realized, were temporary. Actions and results endured. And the galaxy, in its vast complexity, would one day see the truth of human potential, not through arguments or debates, but through achievements that could not be ignored. One afternoon, as he examined a strange energy core salvaged from an abandoned aerolith facility, Ethan noticed something unusual. The core emitted signals that seemed to respond to his presence, almost as if it were alive. Intrigued, he carefully connected it to his station systems and began to experiment. To his amazement, the core generated more energy than any source he had encountered before. It was stable, efficient, and potentially capable of powering human colonies for decades. Ethan smiled quietly to himself. Discoveries like this were rare, and he understood their significance immediately. Such a power source, combined with the propulsion systems he had already developed, could allow humans to reach distant star systems faster than any alien species. It could change the balance of exploration and influence across the galaxy. And yet, Ethan remained calm. He did not rush to announce it, did not seek recognition. For now, it was enough to know that humanity could achieve this when the time was right. As he continued his work, Ethan also began designing ships that could utilize these new energy systems. Unlike conventional vessels, these ships would be self-sufficient, capable of repairing themselves, and equipped with navigation systems that could learn from experience. He envisioned fleets of such ships exploring uncharted space, mapping new worlds, and establishing human presence in areas thought unreachable. The plans were ambitious, but Ethan trusted his skills and the knowledge he had accumulated over decades. The galaxy, though silent, was not empty. Ethan occasionally encountered other travelers, pirates, explorers, or researchers, each with their own agendas. Some were curious about his station, others cautious or suspicious. Ethan interacted with them briefly, learning from their experiences, trading knowledge, and then letting them go. He left no trace of his true capabilities, no hint of the transformations he was preparing for humanity. To the galaxy, he remained a solitary wanderer, a shadow moving through the stars. Despite his isolation, Ethan never forgot humanity. He followed reports of human colonies, their struggles, their triumphs, and their small victories against natural disasters and alien challenges. He felt pride in their achievements, even though he had no direct involvement. He understood that his work, though hidden, was ultimately meant to support them. Humanity's potential in his eyes could only be realized if it was guided wisely, prepared carefully, and strengthened with the knowledge of the wider galaxy. Years turned into decades. Ethan grew older, though the isolation and discipline of his life kept him sharp and focused. The galaxy continued to evolve, civilizations rising and falling, stars dying and new ones forming. And through it all, Ethan worked tirelessly, never seeking recognition, never yielding to frustration, and never allowing distraction to interrupt his mission. His silence was not emptiness, it was preparation. His disappearance was not defeat, it was strategy. One day, as he surveyed a remote cluster of uncharted planets, Ethan noticed something unusual in the communications networks. A faint signal, unlike any he had encountered, flickered across the sensors. It contained a pattern that was unmistakably human. Someone somewhere was reaching across the stars, attempting to communicate. Ethan's heart quickened. Could it be another human explorer, lost or in need? Or was it something else entirely? He carefully decoded the signal, analyzing its structure and content. To his astonishment, it contained technical designs, energy systems, starship blueprints, and schematics that matched his own work in complexity and innovation. Ethan realized immediately the significance. Someone, perhaps unknowingly, had begun to follow a path similar to his own. The message was not complete, but it suggested that humanity's potential was awakening elsewhere in the galaxy. It was a sign that his long years of preparation had not been in vain. And though the sender of the signal was unknown, Ethan felt a renewed sense of purpose. His mission was clear: to guide humanity, to ensure that its rise was deliberate, strong, and undeniable. The discovery inspired Ethan to expand his work even further. He began designing communication systems that could transmit human knowledge securely across vast distances. He created protocols to prevent misuse or interference by alien civilizations. He refined the energy systems, propulsion mechanisms, and defensive technologies he had developed over decades. Everything he did was aimed at one goal: ensuring that humanity, when the time came, would be ready to step into its true place in the galaxy. As the years passed, Ethan's station became a hub of innovation and preparation, a silent testament to human ingenuity. He remained unseen by the galaxy, his work hidden, yet its impact grew steadily. He had become a quiet guardian of humanity's future, a solitary figure whose actions would one day echo across the stars. And through it all, he remained patient, knowing that the moment for revelation would arrive only when humanity was ready to embrace it. In the solitude of space, Ethan Varus reflected on the journey that had brought him here. The insult that had driven him away from Aurora Prime now seemed insignificant compared to the knowledge, skills, and understanding he had gained. He understood that true strength was not measured by words or recognition, but by action, perseverance, and preparation. Humanity, he knew, was capable of extraordinary feats, and he, by choosing silence and disappearance, had given it the foundation to achieve them. As he looked out at the stars, Ethan smiled quietly. Each point of light represented a possibility, a challenge, and an opportunity. The galaxy was vast, but he no longer feared it. He had learned its secrets, mastered its technologies, and understood its rhythms. And when the time came, humanity would rise to meet it, not with anger or pride, but with intelligence, courage, and ingenuity. For now, Ethan continued his work in the quiet of the distant station. The galaxy moved on, unaware of the human who had chosen silence and exploration over conflict. Yet in that silence, in that patient and deliberate preparation, the seeds of the future were being sown. And one day, those seeds would bloom, revealing to all the universe the true power, creativity, and resilience of humanity. And so the silent engineer labored on, unseen, unknown, and unstoppable, shaping a future that would one day astonish the galaxy. For 28 years, Ethan Varus had remained in the quiet reaches of the galaxy, far from human colonies, council chambers, and the judgment of alien civilizations. He had lived in isolation, observing, experimenting, and learning. Every moment had been spent carefully preparing for a future that only he could envision. Yet now he sensed that the time was beginning to approach when humanity would need him, not as a diplomat, not as a warrior, but as a guide and an architect of progress. It began with the signals. Faint at first, almost imperceptible, they appeared in the networks that Ethan had been quietly monitoring. Ships from human colonies reported anomalies in energy readings, propulsion patterns that did not match known technology, and communication signals that hinted at a deeper intelligence behind them. At first, Ethan studied these anomalies from a distance, analyzing them to determine whether they were random errors, alien interference, or something initiated by humans themselves. It became clear that humanity, even without knowing it, was beginning to catch up to the edge of what he had been preparing for decades. He realized that his silence, once a personal shield, could now serve a broader purpose. Humanity needed guidance, but it needed it in a way that allowed people to discover their potential for themselves. Intervening too early could disrupt the natural development of innovation and leadership. Ethan decided to act indirectly first, planting ideas, subtle improvements, and patterns that could inspire human engineers without revealing the full extent of his work. One of the first projects he initiated was a series of encoded transmissions sent to key human colonies. These transmissions contained fragments of designs, energy schematics, and propulsion algorithms, disguised as theoretical research. Engineers and scientists who received them were amazed at their elegance and efficiency. They often thought the designs were new discoveries or the results of simulations pushed to the edge of human knowledge. Yet, every fragment was intentionally incomplete, leaving room for human creativity to fill in the gaps. In the colony of Novarascend, one of the most advanced human settlements near the edge of explored space, the effect was immediate. Young engineers began experimenting with the new designs, testing them in small ships and energy systems. Their results far exceeded expectations. Energy systems ran cleaner, propulsion mechanisms became more reliable, and communication networks operated over longer distances with minimal interference. While no one knew the source of these breakthroughs, the results ignited a sense of pride and excitement across the colony. Back on his remote station, Ethan observed their progress with satisfaction. He watched as human minds began to stretch, to explore new possibilities, and to solve problems that had seemed impossible just years before. The subtlety of his approach was key. He did not interfere directly. He merely guided, nudged, and inspired, allowing humanity to discover its own potential. The beauty of human ingenuity was that it thrived on challenge and curiosity. By giving them a puzzle instead of a solution, he allowed them to grow stronger. Meanwhile, in the Interstellar Council, whispers of Ethan's work began to circulate. Alien diplomats remembered the young engineer who had vanished decades ago. Some dismissed him as a forgotten figure, while others began to notice changes in human capabilities. Ships traveled farther, energy systems became more efficient, and human engineers seemed increasingly innovative in ways that could not be explained by ordinary progress. Rumors spread that Ethan, the silent engineer, had returned, not in person, but through his ideas, quietly reshaping humanity from afar. Ethan also began monitoring the reactions of the older generation of humans, those who had been present during his disappearance. Many were skeptical at first, unable to reconcile the rapid advancements with the belief that humans were still young and inexperienced compared to the galaxy's older civilizations. But slowly, they too began to notice the patterns, the consistency of progress, and the growing competence of younger engineers. Even the most doubtful leaders started to wonder if perhaps humanity's potential had been underestimated all along. In this period, Ethan's work expanded beyond engineering and energy systems. He began developing advanced defensive strategies, creating simulations that could predict threats from natural hazards, space anomalies, and potential alien conflicts. These systems were never intrusive. They were designed to be observed and tested by human minds, allowing humans to understand and apply them without realizing the full extent of Ethan's influence. By guiding humans indirectly, he was preparing them to face challenges without dependency, ensuring that their rise would be both organic and strong. At the same time, Ethan continued his personal exploration. Far beyond the known colonies, he discovered abandoned civilizations, remnants of technology that once belonged to species older than any humans had encountered. Some of these technologies were dangerous, capable of unleashing destructive energy if mishandled. Ethan carefully studied them, learning their principles and adapting them safely. He realized that one day, such knowledge might be critical for humanity's survival and dominance. His goal was clear. Humans should encounter these technologies on their own, guided by his preparation, rather than being unprepared and vulnerable. One of his most significant discoveries came from a derelict aerolith facility on the edge of a star cluster. Unlike other stations, this one contained systems that could manipulate energy at the planetary scale. Shields capable of protecting entire colonies from meteor storms, energy conduits that could power cities for decades, and navigation systems that could calculate optimal paths through unstable star systems were all encoded within the station's records. Ethan spent months deciphering, adapting, and improving these technologies. Every new understanding he gained added to the arsenal he could pass on to humanity when the time was right. Yet, despite his intense focus, Ethan never lost sight of the human element. He understood that progress was not merely about technology. It was about creativity, courage, and collaboration. He encouraged problem-solving indirectly, sending encrypted signals with challenges that required teamwork and ingenuity to solve. Human engineers responded, forming groups and teams, testing ideas against one another and growing stronger together. The results were remarkable. In every case, the solutions they discovered surpassed even his expectations, proving that humanity's strength lay not just in technology, but in the human mind itself. Ethan also observed the political sphere of human colonies. He saw divisions, disputes, and rivalries, but he remained patient. He knew that leadership and diplomacy were skills that grew over time, and that humans needed experience, setbacks, and successes to develop them. He did not intervene directly, but he provided tools, insights, and subtle guidance to help leaders navigate complex decisions. Slowly, humans began to demonstrate wisdom and foresight previously thought impossible, though they remained unaware of the unseen hand guiding them. In one remarkable instance, a small colony faced a crisis when a rogue asteroid threatened to collide with a nearby settlement. Traditional methods of deflection had failed, and panic spread among the colony's leaders. Yet, by following a series of encoded suggestions that Ethan had sent years earlier, young engineers devised a method to redirect the asteroid safely using a combination of energy manipulation and propulsion adjustments. The event became a turning point for the colony. Leaders recognized the ingenuity of their engineers, though they had no idea who had truly set the stage for this success. Ethan watched silently from his station, a quiet smile forming on his lips. Humanity had proven its ability to respond to extreme challenges, even when unaware of the full scale of preparation behind them. As decades continued to pass, Ethan realized that the next step of his plan was approaching. Humanity was beginning to exhibit the confidence, skill, and creativity that he had always known it possessed. The subtle nudges he had provided were taking root, and human colonies across the galaxy were beginning to innovate in ways previously thought impossible. His work had transformed isolated efforts into a network of discovery and problem-solving that stretched across multiple star systems. It was during this time that Ethan noticed a new development, a collective signal from multiple human colonies. The transmissions, once fragmented and subtle, now formed a coherent network, sharing data, insights, and innovations across vast distances. Humanity was beginning to communicate effectively, exchanging knowledge and strategies as if guided by an invisible thread. Ethan understood immediately that this was the moment when his indirect influence had reached its peak. Humans were ready to take the next step, to encounter the wider galaxy with confidence, and to demonstrate their potential without relying on him to lead them. Despite this, Ethan remained cautious. He had learned that readiness was not simply about skill or technology, but about mindset. Humanity needed courage, unity, and self-belief. The final test would be whether humans could embrace the challenges ahead without faltering, whether they could rise to meet the galaxy's expectations through their own ingenuity. He prepared one last set of signals, containing the culmination of his work: advanced energy systems, starship blueprints, and defensive technologies. These signals were designed to be discovered naturally, as if by chance, allowing humans to take ownership of their growth and triumph. Ethan's station, a quiet hub of preparation and innovation, became the silent witness to this transformation. For decades, he had been the unseen mentor, guiding humanity from afar. And now, as the signals began to reach their intended recipients, he realized that his long years of patience, study, and preparation had succeeded. Humanity was no longer dependent on his guidance. It had learned to think, to innovate, and to act independently, yet ready to harness the knowledge he had provided. And so, as Ethan observed the galaxy, he felt a quiet sense of satisfaction. The silence that had once been his refuge had become a tool of preparation. The disappearance that had seemed like retreat had become a strategy for growth. Humanity, at last, was beginning to awaken to its full potential, demonstrating intelligence, creativity, and courage across multiple star systems. For the first time in nearly 3 decades, Ethan allowed himself a moment of reflection. The insult that had sent him into silence, the scorn of alien diplomats, and the doubts of others, all of it now seemed insignificant compared to the progress humanity had achieved. He understood that true power lay not in anger or vengeance, but in preparation, foresight, and the patient cultivation of potential. And somewhere, across the galaxy, young engineers and scientists were discovering breakthroughs that would change the course of human history. They marveled at their own ingenuity, never realizing the silent guide who had prepared the path for them. Yet Ethan knew. He had laid the foundations, nurtured the growth, and now humanity was ready to rise not because of him, but because of themselves. The galaxy, vast and indifferent, had become a stage for human ingenuity. And Ethan Varus, the quiet engineer who had once chosen silence and disappearance, was the unseen architect of this awakening. His work, patient, deliberate, and invisible, was finally bearing fruit. Humanity at last was ready to step into its destiny, guided not by anger or insult, but by intelligence, courage, and the quiet power of perseverance. And as the stars stretched endlessly around him, Ethan smiled. The next chapter of human history was about to begin, and the galaxy would never be the same. The quiet signals that Ethan had sent out years ago were no longer subtle. Across the human colonies, engineers, scientists, and leaders began to notice a pattern, a clear direction emerging from the scattered transmissions and energy schematics they had received over decades. The innovations that had started as small breakthroughs now combined into technologies that far exceeded anything humans, or aliens, had seen before. Ships were faster, energy systems more efficient, and communications more secure. It was clear that someone had been guiding humanity's growth, though the source remained a mystery. In the council chambers of Aurora Prime, the oldest and most influential human leaders convened to discuss these developments. They could not explain how the colonies had achieved such rapid advancements. Theories ranged from secret research projects to undiscovered natural phenomena. Some whispered of Ethan Varus, the young engineer who had disappeared 28 years ago after being insulted by an alien diplomat. Many dismissed it as fantasy, but others began to consider the possibility. If Ethan had truly spent decades preparing humanity, his absence would finally make sense. Meanwhile, alien civilizations began to take notice. Diplomats from species that had once dismissed humanity now approached cautiously, curious and wary of the sudden rise in human capability. Ships equipped with human energy systems could traverse sectors faster than before, establish colonies on previously unreachable planets, and communicate across vast distances without delay. Aliens who had once considered humans inconsequential were now forced to reconsider their assumptions. Some even began to seek alliances, hoping to benefit from the technological surge before it gave humans a clear advantage. Ethan, observing all of this from his remote station, felt a quiet sense of satisfaction. The galaxy was beginning to understand what he had known all along. Humans were capable of extraordinary things. He remained unseen, but his influence was undeniable. He had chosen the path of patience, preparation, and subtle guidance, and now humanity was beginning to step into its full potential. The first direct consequence of his work came when a human colony, Nova Ascend, discovered a previously unknown star system rich with resources. Using the energy systems and propulsion mechanisms that Ethan had indirectly provided, they were able to reach the system safely and establish a settlement in record time. The discovery was celebrated across human colonies as a triumph of engineering, leadership, and ingenuity. No one knew that the foundations for this achievement had been laid decades earlier by a single human who had chosen silence over confrontation. Ethan watched these developments with quiet pride. He knew that true leadership required more than technology. It required vision, courage, and the ability to inspire others. In Nova Ascend, the young engineers who had followed his indirect guidance now led teams of their own, solving complex problems and pushing the boundaries of human capability. Their success was a reflection not only of their skill, but of the careful preparation that Ethan had provided. In another sector, a human fleet encountered a natural phenomenon that had baffled scientists for centuries, a region of space where conventional navigation systems failed due to unstable gravitational fields and energy fluctuations. Using advanced navigation protocols that Ethan had embedded in their research archives, the fleet was able to traverse the region safely, mapping new planets and establishing trade routes. The achievement stunned alien observers, who had long assumed that humans were inexperienced and ill-prepared for such challenges. Ethan also began to prepare humanity for potential threats. While the galaxy had been largely peaceful, history had shown that civilizations often rose and fell due to conflict or natural disaster. He developed defensive strategies and advanced energy shields capable of protecting entire colonies from asteroid strikes, cosmic storms, or hostile incursions. These systems were shared indirectly with human engineers, who tested and implemented them without fully understanding their origin. The result was a network of prepared colonies, resilient and capable of defending themselves against unforeseen dangers. The Interstellar Council, which had once dismissed humanity as minor players, now convened to address the sudden rise in human capability. Alien diplomats debated how to respond, some advocating for cooperation, others for caution. Humanity, once underestimated, was no longer an easy target for manipulation or ridicule. The silent engineer who had once been insulted had laid the groundwork for a civilization capable of standing on its own, confident, and independent. Despite the growing influence of his work, Ethan remained cautious. He understood that revealing himself too soon could disrupt the natural growth of human leadership and ingenuity. Humanity needed to claim its own victories, to develop confidence in its abilities, and to demonstrate that it could thrive without relying on a single guiding hand. For this reason, he continued to operate from the shadows, providing tools, insights, and subtle guidance while allowing humans to take credit for their achievements. In one particularly remarkable instance, a coalition of human colonies faced a threat from a previously unknown alien species that had begun exploring the outer sectors. The newcomers were technologically advanced and strategically adept, and early encounters suggested they could challenge human settlements if left unchecked. The human colonies were initially unsure how to respond, their leaders debating whether to engage diplomatically or prepare for conflict. Ethan had anticipated such challenges. Using the advanced defensive strategies he had shared indirectly, human engineers quickly developed protective systems for colonies, fortified trade routes, and improved communication networks to ensure rapid coordination. When the alien species made contact, humans responded with confidence, demonstrating both strength and strategic planning. The encounter ended without violence, but it marked a turning point. Humanity was no longer naive, unprepared, or easily dismissed. The galaxy had begun to recognize that humans could compete and collaborate on equal footing with older, more experienced civilizations. As his influence became more apparent, Ethan also worked to ensure that humanity's rise would be sustainable. He emphasized innovation, collaboration, and ethical leadership in the systems he designed and the challenges he provided. Engineers were encouraged to explore new ideas, test boundaries, and develop solutions independently. Leaders were guided to consider both immediate and long-term consequences of their decisions. By fostering resilience and foresight, Ethan prepared humans not just for the present, but for the unpredictable challenges of the galaxy. One evening, as he reviewed the progress of multiple colonies, Ethan received a signal unlike any he had encountered before. It was a coordinated network transmission, combining energy systems, navigation protocols, and defensive schematics from several human sectors. The message was clear. Humanity had begun to share knowledge across colonies on its own, independently of his guidance. The realization filled Ethan with a quiet satisfaction. After decades of preparation, humanity was finally acting as a unified civilization, capable of innovation, problem-solving, and self-determination. Despite the growing prominence of human colonies, Ethan remained hidden. He watched from his station, observing the emergence of new leaders, the success of ambitious projects, and the resilience of engineers and scientists. He took care to ensure that humans continued to take initiative, learn from experience, and demonstrate creativity. His role was no longer that of a teacher or guide. It was that of a silent architect, shaping the conditions for success while allowing humans to claim their own victories. In Aurora Prime, discussions about Ethan Varus became more frequent. Older leaders remembered the insult he had endured decades ago, and younger leaders speculated about his possible influence on recent technological breakthroughs. Some argued that he had returned in some form, guiding humanity indirectly. Others dismissed such ideas as fanciful. Yet even the skeptics could not deny the rapid progress being made across multiple colonies. Humanity had grown stronger, faster, and more capable than anyone had expected. Meanwhile, aliens who had once underestimated humans now approached with caution and curiosity. The aerolith-derived technologies that Ethan had adapted, combined with his subtle guidance, had given humanity capabilities that rivaled or exceeded those of older civilizations. Diplomats who had once dismissed humans as insignificant now studied their progress closely, seeking alliances, trade agreements, and cooperation. The balance of power in certain sectors of the galaxy had begun to shift, quietly but unmistakably. Ethan's patience and foresight were finally paying off. He had chosen silence over confrontation, preparation over immediate recognition, and observation over reaction. His disappearance, once a mystery, had allowed him to operate without interference, gathering knowledge, developing strategies, and guiding humanity from afar. And now, the fruits of decades of effort were becoming visible across the galaxy. Yet Ethan knew that the final step was still ahead. Humanity had grown capable, confident, and innovative, but the full realization of its potential required a challenge that could unite them, test their ingenuity, and demonstrate their readiness to the galaxy. He began to plan this next stage carefully, ensuring that humans would encounter it not as followers of a single mind, but as a civilization capable of facing the future with intelligence, courage, and creativity. As he looked out at the stars, Ethan allowed himself a rare moment of reflection. The insult that had driven him into silence, the scorn of alien diplomats, and the doubts of others, all of it had led to this point. Humanity, prepared and guided, was beginning to rise, demonstrating ingenuity, leadership, and resilience across multiple star systems. And when the time came, Ethan would reveal himself, not as a hero seeking praise, but as a witness to humanity's triumph. In the meantime, he continued his quiet work, monitoring progress, refining systems, and ensuring that humanity's growth remained steady and sustainable. The galaxy, vast and unpredictable, was a stage for human achievement. And Ethan Varis, the silent engineer who had once chosen disappearance over confrontation, was the architect of this awakening. His patience, intelligence, and foresight had prepared humanity for a future that was now within reach. The colonies continued to thrive, leaders became more confident, and engineers discovered breakthroughs that reshaped entire industries. Across the galaxy, humans were beginning to understand their own potential. The time of waiting, preparation, and silent guidance was drawing to a close. Humanity at last was ready to take the next step, and as the stars stretched endlessly around him, Ethan smiled quietly. The invisible work of decades, the careful cultivation of knowledge and skill had succeeded. Humanity would rise, not because of a single individual, but because of the potential that had been nurtured, guided, and finally unleashed. The galaxy had begun to notice. And soon the full story would unfold. Decades had passed since Ethan Varis had walked out of the council chamber on Aurora Prime, choosing silence over confrontation. In the quiet solitude of the outer galaxy, he had labored tirelessly, preparing humanity for a future they could not yet see. Now the time had come. Humanity was ready to take its place among the stars, confident, capable, and united. Ethan knew that he could finally reveal himself, not as a conqueror or hero seeking glory, but as a witness to the rise of a species he had always believed in. The signals that Ethan had sent over the years had guided countless human engineers and leaders to breakthroughs that transformed technology, communication, and defense. Entire colonies now operated with systems far beyond what was possible 3 decades earlier. Human ships traversed previously unreachable sectors, their energy cores powered by the innovations Ethan had adapted from ancient civilizations. Defensive shields protected settlements from cosmic hazards, and fleets coordinated seamlessly, ready to face any challenge. Humanity had grown stronger than even Ethan had imagined. In the council chambers of Aurora Prime, whispers filled the air. Humans had begun to recognize patterns in their technological advances, realizing that their progress had been guided, intentionally or not. The question of Ethan Varis loomed larger with each passing day. Leaders debated whether he had truly been absent or whether he had been orchestrating humanity's rise from the shadows. Some older humans remembered the insult he had endured decades earlier and wondered if his silence had been part of a larger plan. They spoke in hushed tones, knowing that the answer, whatever it might be, could change the way humanity understood itself. Ethan's first step was to reveal himself to a small group of trusted leaders. He chose a location far from the centers of alien diplomacy, a neutral zone in the outer sectors where humans could meet without interference. When he appeared, calm and composed, his presence stunned those who had long speculated about his fate. Many had assumed he was lost forever, that the insult from the alien diplomat had ended his career, if not his life. Now seeing him standing quietly among them, they felt awe, curiosity, and relief. Ethan spoke simply, without arrogance or pride. He recounted his journey in the outer galaxy, the decades of study, exploration, and preparation. He explained how he had guided human development indirectly, sending signals, ideas, and challenges to inspire engineers and leaders without revealing the full extent of his knowledge. Every word carried calm authority, the kind that comes from a lifetime of deliberate thought and action. He did not seek recognition, only understanding. The leaders listened intently, absorbing the magnitude of his work. They realized that humanity's rapid advancement was not a stroke of luck, but the result of careful preparation by one of their own. Yet the most remarkable part was not Ethan's skill, but his patience, humility, and unwavering faith in humanity. He had chosen silence when insulted, and in that silence, he had built a foundation for a species to rise stronger than anyone had imagined. Word of Ethan's return spread quickly across human colonies. Engineers, scientists, and leaders marveled at the stories of his work, realizing that the breakthroughs they had achieved were part of a larger vision. Ships, energy systems, and defense technologies, all innovations they had taken pride in, were the result of guidance, subtle and patient, from a human who had once been dismissed and insulted. Pride swelled in human hearts, not just for the achievements themselves, but for the resilience and ingenuity that had allowed them to succeed. Ethan's return coincided with a critical moment in the galaxy. Several alien civilizations, long accustomed to viewing humans as minor players, had begun to challenge human colonies in trade, exploration, and influence. Some underestimated the humans' capabilities, believing that their progress was a fluke. Others feared that humans might disrupt established balances of power. Yet humanity, guided by the decades of preparation Ethan had overseen, responded with confidence. Human fleets equipped with advanced propulsion systems and energy shields moved swiftly to protect colonies and secure trade routes. Engineers implemented technologies that allowed ships to operate autonomously, responding to threats and navigating unstable sectors with precision. Communication networks ensured that all colonies remained connected, sharing knowledge, coordinating defense, and advancing exploration simultaneously. Humans acted decisively, without fear, demonstrating the ingenuity and capability that Ethan had nurtured in silence. In one remarkable encounter, a fleet of human ships met a coalition of alien vessels attempting to assert dominance over newly explored sectors. The aliens, confident in their superior technology and experience, expected humans to falter. Instead, humans maneuvered with precision, their ships synchronized, energy shields resilient, and weapons systems prepared but non-lethal, sending a clear message. Humanity was not to be underestimated. The aliens, witnessing the display of strategy, ingenuity, and coordination, paused and reconsidered their approach. They had underestimated humans for too long. Ethan observed the developments quietly from his station, satisfied that his work was bearing fruit. He had prepared humanity not just to survive, but to thrive, to demonstrate its potential without relying on him to act as a leader or hero. He knew that the greatest strength of a species came not from one individual, but from the collective courage, creativity, and intelligence of its people. Humanity had proven itself ready. The council chambers of Aurora Prime became a place of celebration. Leaders, engineers, and diplomats gathered to honor the achievements of the colonies and the unity they had shown. The alien diplomat who had once insulted Ethan decades earlier now stood among them, no longer dismissive but respectful. He recognized the ingenuity and perseverance of humans, admitting that he had underestimated a species capable of exceeding expectations and thriving in the galaxy's most challenging environments. Ethan did not seek the spotlight, but he could not ignore the recognition entirely. He spoke to the council, emphasizing that humanity's triumph was the result of collective effort, innovation, and courage. He reminded them that the insult he had endured so many years ago was irrelevant to the accomplishments of today. It had been a challenge, a turning point, and a lesson in patience, resilience, and strategic action. The human colonies, now connected and coordinated across vast distances, began planning ambitious new explorations. They charted previously unknown sectors, established trade with alien civilizations on equal terms, and developed technologies that would support generations to come. Each step of progress was built upon the careful preparation Ethan had guided, yet every success belonged to humanity. Engineers and leaders celebrated their achievements, unaware of the full extent of the silent architect who had enabled them. Ethan knew that the galaxy would continue to challenge humans, as it always had challenged civilizations before. Yet he also knew that humanity was ready. The species had learned to think critically, innovate creatively, and act courageously. They had overcome doubt, solved complex problems, and demonstrated resilience in the face of uncertainty. Ethan had chosen silence and disappearance, not to withdraw from the world, but to give humanity the space and opportunity to grow stronger than anyone could have imagined. The triumph was not just technological, it was cultural and spiritual. Humans had learned to trust in their intelligence, creativity, and unity. They had learned that insults and scorn could not define them. They had learned that patience, perseverance, and careful preparation could turn challenges into opportunities. And as humanity rose, so too did respect from alien civilizations, who began to see humans not as naive newcomers, but as equals capable of shaping the future of the galaxy. Ethan took one last tour of his remote station before leaving. The facility, once abandoned and silent, had become a hub of knowledge, innovation, and preparation. It contained decades of research, energy systems, propulsion technologies, and defensive strategies, all adapted for human use. As he walked through the chambers, he felt a quiet satisfaction. Humanity was ready. The time for guidance had ended, the time for action had begun. He decided that his next step would be to disappear once more. Not out of shame or fear, but to allow humanity to claim its victories fully, independently, and proudly. He had laid the foundation, nurtured the growth, and demonstrated the potential, but now the future belonged entirely to humans. His presence would no longer overshadow their achievements. The galaxy would remember the triumph of a species, not the work of one individual. As he departed, human colonies continued their expansions, fleets explored new sectors, and engineers implemented the final pieces of the systems he had developed. Aliens, once dismissive, now approached with caution, respect, and even admiration. Humanity had risen above doubt, insult, and expectation. The species had proven that intelligence, ingenuity, and perseverance could overcome even the greatest challenges. Ethan Varus, the silent engineer who had once been insulted and dismissed, vanished quietly into the depths of space. His work remained, embedded in the technologies, strategies, and innovations that humanity now relied upon. And humanity, now fully aware of its own strength and potential, moved boldly into the galaxy, ready to face any challenge, explore any star system, and achieve greatness beyond imagination. The insult from 28 years ago had long been forgotten by most, yet it had served as the spark that began a journey of patience, preparation, and transformation. Ethan's silence had not been weakness, it had been strategy. His disappearance had not been defeat, it had been vision. And now the galaxy could see the full measure of humanity, not through words or pride, but through courage, ingenuity, and the unstoppable force of a species united in purpose and potential. And as the stars stretched endlessly across the blackness of space, humanity thrived, its future brighter than any single individual could have imagined. The silent architect had done his work, and now the universe would remember the rise of humanity, intelligent, resourceful, and capable of wonders that even the oldest civilizations had never dreamed possible.